Wake up your morning in a brand new way with the positive people, places, events, and things in and around your neighborhood and around the world. No matter where you live, your mornings are about to get better. It's the refreshing way to start your day. No doom or gloom, just bright sunshine no matter what the weather. Metro Magazine with Bonnie McDaniel. Inspiring, informative, intelligent, Ion. Positively the best way to start your morning. Good morning, I'm Bonnie McDaniel and welcome to Metro Magazine. Today we're going to be talking about protocol. And we have someone who's going to really help us to define what protocol means first of all, and whether or not you're practicing good protocol. Chen is a woman who's been doing this for a number of years, but before we even talk about her business, we're going to tell her story, or rather have her tell her story. And what an amazing story it is. So without belaboring the point, we're going to welcome Chen to Metro Magazine.
Good morning, Bonnie. Thank you for having me.
Good morning. Thank you for coming. I met you, I guess it's been about 2-3 years ago now.
That's right.
And one of the things that fascinated me about you is something that I talk about all the time with people when I define what interesting people are like, and that element being texture. You are a lady who has a lot of texture. So to give an insight into where that texture comes from, let's talk about, now I understand you were born here in the DC metro area.
That's right.
But you also shared that you lived in Pennsylvania. Let's talk about your formative years.
Okay, well, as I was sharing with you, I was born in Tacoma Park, which is right on the border of DC, and my parents were from Pennsylvania. So when I was about 10, we moved to the country.
Okay.
Way in the country with cows in the pastures. It was a whole new experience.
That will add a lot of texture.
I know. Well, it's funny now because during, from 10 years old to 17, I lived in the country. Okay. And you learn to just love those smells of country life. And when my kids smell it now, when we're driving in the country, they go, oh, I love that smell.
So were your parents farmers, or this was just you lived in the country?
No, they moved to the country, yes. Not a farm, but we lived across the road, country road from a huge farm. Okay.
Yeah. So did you have an opportunity to participate, maybe go and volunteer or work a farm? Is that part of your past?
No, but we did go to I should say we did work a little bit on the farm because our babysitter was one of the daughters of the farmer who lived in the field across from us. And so we would go over quite frequently to the barns and watch how they would take care of the cows and sit at the big country table with the farmer and all of the sons that took care of the farm. And that was a different experience. Okay.
Now we're talking about texture. So tell me, what layer of texture would you say you gained from, first of all, being born here in the DC area and then moving to a farm? What element did that experience add to your life, do you think?
Well, I think it gave me such an appreciation for nature, and because all of a sudden we were surrounded by beautiful mountains and animals and deer and things that I wasn't used to. And every weekend, we would go traveling through the mountainside. And I just, to this day, I'm an avid bird watcher. I love going out in nature, and I just have an appreciation for our countryside. Just beautiful. I love the beauty, the sunsets and the sunrises. It just, I could sit and look at them. Okay. Now, is there anything in particular that might have happened to you during the years that you lived in Pennsylvania that you can recall that you say, is it, I call it those little moments when you put a sticky note on it? Yes. Well, there were a couple. One, my grandparents didn't live far from us when we moved to Pennsylvania, and my grandmother, she was one of the patriarchs of the church that we went to, and everyone called her and talked about all of their problems, and she always had a smile on her face. She could laugh so easily. And you never heard her talk poorly about anybody. But she was really my confidant. I would go to her and talk. I could talk about boys. I could talk about anything. I was the oldest grandchild. And so I think just being with her really helped me to have more of a positive outlook even when things weren't going so well. And the other thing is my youngest sister, who was 13 years younger than me. She was born when we lived in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And she had aortic stenosis. She was diagnosed at the age 3.
Okay.
And so me being 13.
Now, tell our viewers what that is.
Okay. Aortic stenosis is a narrowing of the aortic valve, the main valve in the heart.
Okay.
So as the oldest child, I have 3 sisters, my youngest with the heart condition. We were in and out of the hospital a lot. She had open heart surgery when she was 7 and heart failure. And so we were back and forth in the hospital with her. And my mother worked. And so I ended up taking on that role of, well, I'm going to make sure she's okay. I would sleep by her bed at night to make sure, and if she would go into convulsions sometimes and be rushed to the hospital. So that was a hard time.
So you're having to care for your younger sister, put a great deal of responsibility on you.
Right.
So how many years did that have? Did that go on? Or
well, that went on until I went away to school.
Okay.
And even after I went away to school, I would take her on vacation with us and make sure she would come. I moved back to Maryland.
Okay.
And
when did you move back to Maryland? After you graduate, I went away to college? Or?
Yes, I went to college back in Tacoma Park.
Okay. So you
And,
went back home,
went back
literally.
home, kind of, yes. But I still consider Pennsylvania my home.
Do your parents still live in Pennsylvania?
Yes,
by
they
the
do.
way?
Same
Okay.
house I grew up in.
So you
Yes.
made the transition back here.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
And so we would have her come and visit us while growing up and take turns. Sometimes if she was in the hospital, we would go visit her and take turns staying with her. And, you know, she's a great sister.
Now, you lived until you graduated from high school and then came back home, if you will.
Right.
What went into your decision-making process in terms of where you would decide to go to college? Was it because of a major? Talk about those decisions and how you were able to come about, making that decision to come back here.
Well, my senior year, I went away to a boarding school in Pennsylvania, which was not that far, and it was a Christian boarding school, a Seventh-day Adventist, because I'm a Seventh-day Adventist Christian. And so many of my classmates from the academy were going to the school that I chose to go to,
which is
Columbia Union College.
Oh my goodness, I know that school.
Yes,
okay.
It's now called Washington Adventist University. And so then you kind of go where your friends are going. And my dad actually went there. And so I decided to go back. And I had a lot of family that lived here. I had some aunts that lived in Maryland. And so it was easy to come back.
So it sounds like you are a person who very much honors tradition within your family.
Yes.
Was that also the case with your siblings, or did they venture off and choose other things to do?
Right. No, they chose other things, but very close family. All of my sisters were very close with my parents and extended family, and I like that. I like that we're very close, and they still call me the bossy one.
And you know what? It's interesting because now with myself, of course, there are a lot of nieces and nephews, and I laugh because I remember when my children were coming up. And of course, my nieces and nephews, I was the house that the kids got sent to in the summers when they needed to be straightened out. And I was I don't know if I like that role. But they came, and of course, there was I wasn't strict, but we had rules in our house. And so it was like, you're going to go to Aunt Bonnie's for the summer. And
she's going to straighten you out.
So it's amazing how has that been the case with you and any of your nieces and nephews?
Yeah. Oh, I've had my cousins who are much younger, but I consider them my nieces.
Right.
They would come and stay with me in the summertime after I had children, and they were teenagers, and they would help babysit and things like that. And I loved having them around.
That's funny. I think probably the most interesting story that happened for me was one niece in particular who, she was the tough one. Yeah. And she came kicking and screaming, literally. And she fought me tooth and nail. She stayed the summer. And what's interesting now is that she called on me maybe a year and a half ago. I'm now her mentor.
Yeah, isn't that something how that turns around?
I know, which is so interesting because I was like, this kid doesn't like me at all. And we have the greatest relationship. Yeah. And when she gets ready to make
any kind of business decisions, she comes to me and asks. So do you have anyone in your family that you've developed that kind of relationship with?
Actually with my girls, I have two girls and a son. And the funny thing is, when they're younger, especially when they're teenagers, we know nothing, right?
Exactly. It's like, okay, I'm from another planet, you know.
I know. What do we know?
Yeah.
But now they'll call or they'll come and talk to me. How should I handle this situation? What would you do? And I really appreciate that, and I'm honored that they would come and ask me that. And I hear them talking and say, well, ask Mom, because I think she gives good advice.
You know what, that is such, when you reach that point in your relationship with your children, it's like, it's the best gift ever.
Yes.
And the fact that not only are you, we're going to talk about your work in a little bit, not only are you leading women outside of your home, and more importantly, you're helping to continue, you know, they're grown-ups now, but you're helping to continue to lend advice, valuable advice that they cherish to them. So you've gone away to college, and what did you major in?
Well, I started out, I wanted to do photography.
Right, that's right, you did mention that.
And then I wanted to be a zoologist. I wanted to be all these... not so practical at that time, maybe. At least that's what I was told. And so I took medical technology. It was so out of the realm of my even interest. But that was something that people, you can get a job. You can get a job in that. It was either that, teaching, or nursing. So I thought, okay, I'll do that. Well, I didn't like it at all. When we had to give each other shots, I said, as soon as that happened, I said, I'm done. I'm done. So I ended up getting my degree in organizational management.
Okay. And it's interesting. You brought up something interesting. You were talking about the choices that we make in terms of what we had to do majoring in school, because it was always investment versus what the return was going to be when you were going to college. And it's interesting that, and we have those similarities, because I majored in business and you majored in organizational management. What is interesting to me is that if you look at a lot of the young women today, one of the things that I do admire about them is that they're making the choice to do what they love.
That is true.
And even though as a parent of a young woman and a young man, sometimes I'm like, yikes, are they going to be able to earn a living at it? Secretly, I'm like rooting them on, because I think that at the end of the day, when you make those choices, your life is a lot richer. So let's talk about Christine and the choices that you made and how you've come to be able to do the things that you're doing now, and what that thought process was like. Right.
Well, as I said, I am a Christian, and so a big decision I made was I would marry somebody that was of the same faith as I was.
And why do you think that's important?
Well, for me, I felt that was very important when we raised children, that we were on the same page, that we had the same faith, that our children weren't getting conflicted messages. I wanted us to be a family unit that prayed together, that went to church together. I thought that was my core value, that our family be a Christian family.
Do you know of any families or family that has chosen to do it the opposite of that, and whether or not they fared, or whether or not things turned out well for them? Do you know of anyone personally?
I do know. I do, and it is difficult. It's difficult when you don't have the same values, and it's confusing for children.
How does it, talk about that for a minute? How does it impact children negatively when you have people, for instance, of different faiths? And the experiences I've had have primarily been when more along the lines of one not practicing any kind of faith, and then you have the other who was. Talk about that and the impact it has.
Well, I think what I've seen, what happens, either one parent will continue going to church, taking the children without the other, or the one will give it up and stay and decide, I'll just not go to church at all. And that's a decision. That's a choice. And maybe that works. But I think for me, it's so important.
And I want to talk about your personal experience, and because this is your story, so please feel free to share.
But I do believe it's important for children to see their parents. It's just like when you discipline. right?
Yeah.
I've had where one will come and say, well, Mom said I could have this or couldn't have this. Can I? And so, the kids are smart. They'll play.
They sure
and
are.
I think it's the same thing with all areas in your, as a parent, that the kids will see this consistency between mom and dad. And of course, people make things work, and I know that. I'm not saying that it could not work, but this is my personal belief that for me, that was very important for me to have that family unit doing things together.
Yeah. Now, is there, and we're going to transition and begin to talk about your professional life in a moment, but is there one lesson in particular, and if you need to do 2 or 3, that's good, but what is the greatest lesson you think you learned from your parents, your mom and your dad, that helped to carry you in your adult years?
Well, I think from my parents, everything they did was for their kids.
Okay.
Even moving to the country was for their kids. They gave up careers to move to the country for their children. And so they sacrificed for us. And my
Do you think that was a good decision?
I do.
Okay.
I do. And they sacrificed for us all the time, and especially now as a parent, and I look back and I see what they did. Boy, I didn't recognize it. Even when I was in my 20s, I didn't recognize it. But now they both worked full time. They'd come home and we'd pack up picnics and go out into the mountains. And I think, I don't know if I'd have the energy to do that today. But that really taught me a lot, and just the love of nature.
It taught you about the value of sacrifice.
Right, and it taught me that, even though they were tired, they took time for us. My dad would play ball with us outside until we wanted to stop. And I know for myself, sometimes I think when my children were younger, when do they want to stop? I think I'm tired. I need to go get a drink. But he would just continue and play, and he had joy. And that's what was so interesting to me, that now when I look back, he truly loved playing with us.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you bring back memories, because I remember when my daughter in particular was, I would say in junior high school, when she was a teenager, she would sometimes come and we would turn all the lights out in the room, and she would come and lie in the bed with me. Because my husband always went to bed like wee hours of the morning. So my daughter would come, we turn the lights out, and she wanted to talk, and I'm laying there and I'm thinking, oh God, is she going to shut up soon? But however, I'm like, on the other side, I was thinking, thank God she wants to talk to me.
That's right.
So I want to listen to what she has to say. And that, I think, is what parents do.
That's right.
When you make the decision to have children with the understanding that it no longer is about you, it really is about these other people.
Right. They're entrusted to you.
Exactly,
right?
exactly. Yeah. So we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about Christine and her professional life. Okay, and we will be right back with more Metro Magazine and Christine Chen in just a moment. Stay tuned. Queen Bee is a book about some of the habits, some of the things that we women do really to undermine ourselves and undermine other women. And it's something that we really can't afford to do any longer. It's actually a book that is a combination of research that I've done interviewing other women and men about what is it that has kept us over the years from becoming the empowered women that we say we are. I have taken interviews from women who talk about some of the experiences they've had in working with other women, either in the capacity of just having relationships in different types of settings, whether it be in the corporate boardroom or a lot of the women that I talk to are entrepreneurs, but really just delving into not just the things that we do in terms of day-to-day, to perform our jobs, but really looking at the things that are really holding us back. One of the things that's interesting to me is the fact that if you take a woman, an average woman, and if you're honest, and put her in a room
with 15, 20 other women and have a gorgeous woman walk in the room, watch the reaction. Chances are very good she's not going to like her, and it has nothing to do with anything other than the fact that she, in their own minds, looks a certain way. If you take that and reverse it, and you are the woman who thinks that everything about yourself is intact, you're going to respond to that woman in a different way. And you're going to listen to her rather than look at her physical being. And that's what I want women to do. I want us to stop looking at what we have on, whether or not, we're thinner or heavier than the next woman, but really to look at who we are as women.
And we're back. If you're just joining us, we're here with Christine Chen from Global Professional Protocol, and I hope I got the name right. If I didn't, she's going to tell me in a moment. And we were talking about, she was sharing her upbringing, and both here in the DC metro area and also in Pennsylvania. And when we went to break, we were going to begin to talk about your professional life, because you shared that you graduated from college, organizational management. And tell me, if you would share with us now, what was that first launching pad for you in terms of going into your professional career?
Well, I ended up graduating late because when we got married, I went right into the workforce, and I put my education on pause because I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Right.
And so I worked for a humanitarian agency. I loved it.
Okay, what were you doing for them?
Well, I was the administrative assistant for the president of the organization. A huge organization all over the world.
Did you get to travel?
I did not, but I got to hear about everything when they would come back from the travels. But working there really made me realize how fortunate I was and how fortunate many of us are here. And that really had a huge impact on me. It still does every day.
In what way?
Because just turn on a faucet and have running water.
Right. That's one of the biggest issues around the world is people not having clean water.
And that's what we did most of the time is drilling wells, not we, but they would go and drill wells so that they had clean water. Because without clean water, you do not have a chance. And that's when disease starts spreading. So that, I just loved working there. It was painful at times to see the tragedies that happen around the world, but it helped me to have a better understanding and compassion for what people are going through. And we have no idea. And I remember going to bed at night and putting my head on the pillow and thinking, I have a pillow to put my head on. There are kids sleeping on streets. There are people sleeping in boxes. And I'm complaining if I have to get up early.
What was it you think you learned in particular from going through that experience and seeing some of the pain that people were going through?
Just to be thankful. Thankful every moment of every day, to be thankful and to recognize that there are great needs around the world. And there are great needs here. And to never take what we have for granted, but to help other people. And that's what I hope I've instilled in my children, to help other people.
I see a lot of, and this isn't a criticism, it's more of an observation, and I want you to talk to this because you bring up a very interesting point, especially when you talk about women and leadership, which is what we're going to get to in a moment as it has to do with your work. But one of the things that concerns me, and again, it's an observation, is that I think in the search or in the quest for a lot of young women, we're talking about women in the series, who are looking to do good around the world. And rather than me make a statement, I want to ask a question. How important do you think it is for these young women to experience, to go and to be a part of, versus, oh, I see something that needs to be done, and they and then they proceed to create an organization without really understanding the needs, if you will? How important do you think that is?
I think it is so important. And I think especially with this next generation coming up. I have daughters that are in their 20s, and my oldest daughter she went on 2 mission trips. And we knew when she came back, she would be different. And she was. When she came. And the thing that struck her, when she came home, she said they had nothing. They didn't have TV. They didn't have the radios that we have. They had nothing, but they were happy.
Right.
And so the lessons, I thought, especially for she was a teenager when she went, for a young teenager to experience life without all of the luxuries, running water and the things that we have here, I thought was really powerful, because so many times, especially for young women, we become
self-absorbed.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that concerns me. I know that there are a lot of very talented young women out there, so I don't want to criticize, but I think if there's anything that I can give them, it would be that go deeper.
Exactly.
Go deeper. Don't look at the surface material. Don't look at, the all of the glamorous side of it, because that's what gets the attention, is the glamorous part of it. But to go deeper and recognize that these are human beings that you are saying you want to serve. So in order to serve, you really have to, I remember, especially when my children were younger, whenever I would talk to children, I made it a point, and I still do, I would sit on the floor.
That's right.
So that I could be at their level and understand and see them where they were, as opposed to standing over them. And, I'm in control, I am the leader and all of that. Rather than doing that, I think it's very important. And so if there's one thing that I'd like to instill in young women especially, is that they go deeper than just the surface. So anyway, I interrupted you.
Yeah. No, what I strive for my own children, and even when I'm teaching, is that it's not just about etiquette and knowing what rule to use. You know what? You can break a rule if it saves someone's feelings. It's all about respect.
Exactly.
And respecting
and I want you to
being.
talk about that, because we are going into what you're doing right now. But before we even go there, just for a moment, because this is really fascinating for me, by the way. The fact that you teach protocol and you do wonderful work with children and professionals around the country. But I think the most fascinating thing for me was the story about the school that you helped to co-found. Share that story, if you will, and then we'll talk about protocol in a moment, because I think it's important.
Okay. Well, I did homeschool my oldest child for a few years. And then when she was going into 2nd grade, she said she wanted to go to school. So I thought, well, okay, that's fine. So we sent her to a Christian school that was not far from her home. It was a Seventh-day Adventist school. And they had been there for 50 years. The first year she was there, they closed. So, did that have something to do with you? But it was okay. But her teacher, phenomenal teacher she had in 2nd grade. My daughter called her Miss Frizzle, from Magic School Bus, Miss Frizzle. And she was Miss Frizzle. Okay. Amazing teacher. And so all of a sudden the school closes. This teacher is without a job. And I said to her, we're going to start a school.
Just like that. We're going to start a school.
We're going to start a school.
Did you have any experience in doing that?
No.
Okay.
But as an oldest child, we can do it, and we will work till it's done. And this teacher could have gotten a job anywhere. And I give her a lot of credit, because she took a step in faith and said, all right. And she said no to...
So Ms. Frizzle and Christine started school.
Well, a friend of mine, I said, listen, because she was a numbers person. And I was not a numbers person at all. So she took care of the books and all of that. And we started a school. And I said, even if we have 20 students, and of course we prayed and prayed and prayed about it. And I thought, we will hire our teacher, and we'll have a little homeschool type environment. Well, God had other plans for our little school.
So you didn't start it in your home?
No. Okay. We started it I asked our church, I said, can we have just a couple rooms to start this little school, and they were so sweet, they let us do that. And then there's a higher educational organization in our church, And they said, well, you have to raise this much money, you have to do this. And well, we did it all. We said, okay, we'll do it. And I did not sleep. I did not eat.
How did you raise your funds? I'm curious.
I picked up the phone and called. I called people. I told them what we were doing. And you know, if you have a vision and people know who you are and they know that what you will do, and especially if it involves children, because a lot of the people didn't know where their children would go to school. And they were worried about it. They were worried about affording a Christian school. And so we made sure that anybody that wanted to come could come. And the first half a year we had 23 students. So quickly we hired another teacher, and she was our head teacher, and then my daughter's second grade teacher.
So was this like a lower school or?
It was a lower. It went from grade 1 to 4.
Okay.
This was back in 1997.
Okay.
And then after Christmas, word got out because I started teaching etiquette there. And word got out. They did a little news story on the etiquette program that we did at our little school. We called ourselves Olney Adventist Preparatory School.
Okay.
And then we had 76 children. And then the next year it went to 97 children. It eventually went to 140 children. We're in the process of building a school right now. I'm no longer really that involved with the school.
How many children are enrolled currently?
I think there might be 120.
Now your school, the school that you helped to co-found, they've received awards?
Well, the students, they rank in the 97th percentile in the standardized nationwide tests, because we decided every classroom would be stellar, and every teacher we hired would be top-notch. Every child would be treated as an individual, not kept in a box. If they were gifted in math, well, then you can go to the next grade and do math. It was kind of a out-of-the-box type school, and kids flourished. We had a wait list of children wanting to get in.
Wow.
And
I think the thing that for me, when you told me this story, because you shared it before, which I was just like, wow, is the fact that, especially in this day and age, and there is a lot of discussion going on about the quality of education in this country. And I wanted you to share that story because you are a professional woman, first of all. And I know that there are a lot of single moms that are out there. And the one thing that I wanted people to get from this story, aside from the fact that you're just phenomenal, that you decide one day to start a school and then you do it, is that we have to, in order to be successful as women, especially as professional women, that it's important that we take our resources and that we bring them together. Because a single mom raising a child or children by herself, operating as a lone wolf, she's almost guaranteed to set herself up for failure, because you can't do it by yourself. And that's the thing I want you to get out of this. But when you get other women who have similar issues or challenges and things that they're trying to get accomplished, when you bring the 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 of you together, no one can stop you. You have automatically created this little village, and that's what you did with the school. You saw a need for your children, and you said, let's do something about it. And that's the thing I wanted, because I know there are a lot of women out there who, as I said before, who are single, and some of them are married, and they're like, what am I going to do with my kids? I want a career, which they should be entitled to. But there are resources around us everywhere. You need to learn how to tap into them. So thank you for sharing that story. So you started your etiquette. That was the first etiquette class you taught?
Right. Well, what happened when my daughter was in the first school with her second grade teacher, the teacher asked me to come and do a literary tea. I had no idea what that was. But I thought, but this teacher, she not only inspired children, she inspired the parents. And parents would do anything for her, because when you did something for her, she would praise you like you were the best thing that happened since sliced bread. And so I loved it. You know, as a mom, sometimes we don't get much praise. And going in to do things for her was just a joy. And so I thought, sure, I'll do it. And I thought, you know, I'm going to make this the best literary tea ever. And so I took in China, I took in everything, and she was just like, thought this was the best thing, and
so this
excited.
began your
Yes.
venture into protocol.
Yes.
And it's interesting too, and I definitely want you to talk about protocol and why it's important in just a moment. But I remember, and I think we've had this conversation before, I majored in business in college, and one of the most valuable classes I took in college was they required business majors to take a class. There were like 3 units, I think. Yeah, 3 units. The Art of Gracious Living, and it was all on protocol.
Love it.
I took those classes, and although I grew up with a church lady, my grandmother, it was like you had to have manners, say please and thank you, and know how to do whatever. This class provided such wonderful foundation for me, especially in dealing with, you know, people of all different kinds in the professional arena. It was a gift. And I talked to you about the fact that, in my opinion, that is something that I think every university should require their students to go through a class such as that. So I felt very, very fortunate at the time. So talk to me then about protocol.
Okay.
And why is it important? First of all, define it for people who don't, because a lot of people hear etiquette, they think, oh, you're stuffy and all of that.
Tea, finger up, drinking
and it has
tea.
nothing to do with that.
No.
Talk a little bit about protocol.
Okay.
Define it and why is it important?
Okay. Well, I did, this teacher that I was telling you about in 2nd grade, she told me about the Protocol School of Washington. You should go there because you did something. So I went. And so that's where I established my educational foundation for it. And protocol or etiquette, it's just the rules of society.
Right.
And those rules change as society changes. You know, no longer is it improper for a man to walk up and shake a woman's hand.
Right.
Years ago, that wasn't considered proper, you know, for a man to do that. And so they change as society changes with social media. That's all changing. But manners are from the inside, and they never change.
Right.
And I always say you can know every etiquette rule in the book, but if you do not treat people with respect.
And that is what I want you to say that again, because when people think manners, etiquette, they think stuffy. It really is.
No.
Say it again.
Okay.
People treating the other person
With respect.
with respect. That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Nothing else. You have to learn how to be respectful toward the person who is next to you.
Right. That's right.
And no matter what culture, no matter what it is you're doing in life, if you can do that, you got the whole ball of wax.
Yeah, you do. And celebrate each other. And I always say, you know, you can learn something from one another. Celebrate the good things in each other's lives.
Right.
Help each other, come alongside and build each other up. There's too much tearing down.
Right. Right.
And so that's what drew me to doing this, because I thought, man, I get to go around and teach people, basically even adults and professionals, how to be nice. Really.
Yeah.
Because it's
it seems kind of weird that you have to teach a person how to do that, doesn't it? It's kind of strange. It shows, it talks a lot to, speaks a lot to the kind of environment that we find ourselves, the climate we find ourselves in today. So
it is. And I think with the social media, I love social media.
So do I.
But I think what's happening is we're losing. In fact, since 1988, we have 1/20th the face-to-face interaction. That's huge. So, and that's not just our young people, that's happening with adults as well. So we're losing the ability to actually sit down and have conversations because, I can just text it. Yeah, I don't need to pick
I
up
don't
the
like
phone and
text
call.
messaging.
Right.
Sometimes it's expedient, but
Of
I
course.
prefer if someone sends me, especially a text that's more than a couple of lines, it's like, okay, I'm not going to respond. I'm going to pick up the phone and call you. I'd rather have a conversation with you because you bring up something that I think is critical because you mentioned social media and the fact, yes, it is here to stay and it's going to become even more prevalent. But what do you think we're losing aside from that face-to-face conversation? What is it that you think we're losing?
Well, I think one huge thing is anonymity. Sometimes will breed where people are more bold. They're bolder with what they say, they don't think things through before. And I just had this conversation with my daughters this morning. Something came up and I said, always wait 24 hours before you respond. If there's something going on that you're upset about or concerned about, give it 24 hours. But with social media, it's an instant response. It's instant response. So just give it some time because you have a different perspective after 24 hours.
And a lot of times when you're, if you're texting a person a message, you as you pointed out, you're caught up in the moment. Yep. You're caught up in the emotions of the moment.
That's right.
And, an hour from now even.
Right.
Once you think about it and you settle down.
Oh, I shouldn't have done that, but it's too late. It's out there for the world to see. Yeah. Years ago, we didn't have that ability. Sometimes we had to wait a whole week before we saw the person again or picked up the phone and called. But now it's so instantaneous.
I remember back earlier in my corporate career, there was an instance where, being African American, there was. It was race. It was a racist comment that was made to me or inferred to me, and I was so incensed by it. I was in a professional arena, and it takes a lot to get me riled. I was so offended by it that I sat and I wrote a memo, a complaint, if you will, and it was pretty fiery. I have a pretty good command of the English language.
I know you do.
And so I took it to my boss because it didn't come from him. It came from someone else. And I took it to him. And he said exactly what you said. He said, okay, you laid out, the facts and all of that. He said, it's very strong. He said, sit on it and read it in the morning.
Oh, good
and
advice.
See what it feels like. Because I was determined to hit that send button.
Yeah.
And send it all the way up the top. And the next morning I came in and I was like, yikes.
Glad I didn't do that.
Because it probably would have ruined me professionally because I was caught up in the moment. And yes, I had every right to be offended by what was said and what was done. But there is a way to handle everything.
That's right. That's right.
Doing it with anger is not the way to do it.
At the end of the day, you want your dignity. And we've all made mistakes. We've said things that we shouldn't have said. But I think part of that, as we get older, it's easier to get a handle on and put a lid on some of it. Right? Yeah. And it's hard for young people, I think, sometimes to have the clarity to know when to just sit quietly and wait. And but I think just understanding the rules of etiquette, the rules of protocol, will help a young person, especially even experienced professionals. I had an attorney tell me one time after I did a session, he came up, he said, I want to tell you a story. He said, I had a resume for a law student that looked fantastic. He was the top of his class, and I thought for sure we would hire him. He said he arrived for the interview late, and when he came in, he did not walk over and shake my hand. He just walked in complaining about the reason why he was late was because the parking attendant took so long to come and get his car, and he said, you know what I did? I walked over, I shook his hand, I said, thank you for coming, and showed him the door. Now, how sad. This young man probably put countless hours into studying and taking tests, preparing for this moment, and he blew it.
Let's go specific to women. What is some of I want you to give me 3 things, faux pas, that you think women commit in business as it has to do with protocol that you think that if they were to change it, it could change the dynamic of how they...
Okay, 3 things. Let me think. Well, I think one of them is women tend to, at least from what I have seen, tend to sit back a little bit more. And, Sheryl Sandberg's book is one example of that. She talks about how women will sit in the back of the boardroom rather than sitting at the table and coming out in the confidence. I think probably the major thing is confidence. I did a seminar a few months ago with another friend of mine who is a professional, and we did it on first impressions, body language. And it was so interesting because there was a group of women that most of them did not know each other. And when they walked in the room, we had them put a tape paper to their back. And then the women walked around and wrote their first impression on the back of each woman that they met. And they didn't see it right away. So then we had a wall, it was called the wall of fear. And they would write down what they felt was their biggest challenge, what they feared. And they, as many papers as they want. Some did 5 papers, some did 1. And they put them up on this wall. Then we had them look at the paper on their back. And the funny thing was, the thing that they were self-conscious about, saying, well, I don't know how to talk to people.
That's interesting.
Right, on their back said, you're so outgoing. There were so many opposites of the perception that the other women had and what they felt inside. And I think so many times we as women, we're so busy looking at the other women around us thinking, oh, they look so much nicer than we do. Oh, they're skinnier than we are. Oh, their hair so big. All these things that we're not focused on. You know what? We bring a lot to the table too. I bring a lot to the table. And that confidence, it shows.
And you bring up an interesting point and I wrote a book several years back, and I talked about the fact that, and why it's important for, good manners. I was talking about children and why parents needed to focus on that, because it's amazing how you operate. Confidence does not come from book knowledge necessarily. It comes from knowing how to apply. And knowing how to communicate what it is you know. So if you were to look at why what you do is so important, you teach people, you share with them ways in which they can communicate their knowledge, walk into a room and feel like you belong there. Those elements really do, at the end of the day, help you to be successful in life, because you can immediately tell someone. I've met a number of women who were brilliant, but who were not the nicest people to be around, very edgy, very abrupt, because they were not feeling good about who they were inside and knowing how to communicate what it was that they know. So if you would, so you did number 1, what would be your second thing?
Okay, as I'm thinking about it, the second one is, I think, finding your voice. And I mean that in a very literal way. Speaking up. I remember, I shared this story with a seminar I did at board meetings that I attended. And I would say something, and I have a very soft voice, and I would say something at the meeting, and people would just kind of go over it and not really acknowledge it. And then somebody else would say kind of the same thing, and people, that's a good idea. I just said that. So I'm not projecting my voice enough. I'm not giving confidence when I speak. And so we know if there was a study done, Albert, what is his name? I can't remember his name. He's at UCLA, that 93% of the messages that we send are nonverbal communication. That's huge.
Right? So what do you give an example of something that you do through your work to help women be able to, or people in general, but women specific to this conversation,
to speak with a strong, clear voice.
Okay, give an example, if you will, of, say the sky is blue. Say it in a way that they shouldn't say it, and then in a way that's more effective. Okay,
so tone is part of nonverbal communication. So if somebody has their eyes down and they say the sky is blue, that's not as powerful as they look at you and say the sky is blue. With passion when they're speaking. But I think so many times we're afraid that, maybe what we're saying is going to sound stupid. And I don't want to sound that way. And there are others sitting around the table or brainstorming, saying all kinds. Get in the conversation.
Is there anything, is there an exercise that a person can do at home in that regard to help them become more comfortable in speaking in their own voice?
There actually is. In fact, my partner in these seminars that we're doing, Jan Fox, she is the professional in this area with finding your voice as far as making it powerful. And she says you have to bend over, and as you stand up, then as soon as you get up, you say your name. And you say it from your stomach rather than a breathy, hi, my name is Christy. You say, my name is, and it comes out so much more powerful.
And I sat in one of your seminars, and it was funny because we had just my team and I had just finished taping a voiceover that I was doing, and sometimes I am breathy when I speak because I can also project.
Yes.
And I don't want to do that so much in certain instances. And so because it was a closed setting, I was being breathy. And then I think a couple of days later, I come and I hear Dan said, I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I need to speak differently when I'm trying to make a point.
Right.
But,
and what a difference. And when you make the eye contact.
Right.
And have compassion or passion behind what you're saying.
Right, right. Yeah. I have had instances where I have to, depending on who you are, kind of tone it down a little bit, because you can be a little bit intimidating because I'm a good starer, if there's such a word. And depending on who you're talking to, speak to that, because we do have to temper, even when we have confidence or if we're, we are in control. Control is a double-edged sword.
Well, I think some people have a hard time reading social cues. And in order to succeed, not just in business, but in life, I think it's so important to be able to read the social cues. When you're speaking with another person and they're looking at their watch or they're looking around, you know that they're done talking.
Right.
So that's your cue. I need to politely say, I'm going to leave now, or I'm going to excuse myself, or whatever. So that being able to read social cues, if their feet are pointing this way and you're talking to them, they're in a rush, ready to go. Don't hold them, in a long conversation. So reading those little body language, it's so important so that you know where you stand with that person. And if somebody, I think, if they are very timid or very quiet, sometimes mirroring that person will help.
Give an example of mirroring.
So if somebody's leaned in and talking to you, you might want to lean in with them.
Okay.
To show that I'm listening to what you're saying. If they're sitting a certain way, you may want to sit that way as well. And they may not recognize it, but it brings a comfort level with them.
These are some wonderful, wonderful skills, I think, that a lot of people can benefit from, which is one of the reasons, other than telling your story, that I wanted you to share your work, because I think these are the things that people take for granted. Right. But at the end of the day, they are really the elements to being successful, I think, in life, whether it's professional or on a personal level, being able to communicate and exist and be with other people.
That's right.
In a good way. Now, number 3.
Oh,
you said there were I asked you for 3. You didn't say I asked you for 3.
What's another? For women specifically?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's very important for women to collaborate.
Okay.
And because we've talked about this, how sometimes women can be catty. And man, women have so much to offer.
We do.
Can you imagine, instead of being catty, to collaborate?
And we talked about that earlier when we were sharing your experience with the need for a school. You're bringing what you have to the table, and I talk about this in my book, not so much being in a competitive mode, because it's not about competition. First of all, how many billions of people are there in the world?
Right.
Even if you were the only one, you couldn't service them all. And if we could get out of the mindset, I think, of thinking that whatever it is we have to offer, that we're the only person that can offer it, and then understanding that someone else, if you take 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 other people who do the same things, and you all provide different elements, how powerful you can be.
Yeah, that's right. And that is kind of what I did last year, because for so long, many of us, especially if we're women business owners, we're on our own.
Right.
We're working every day by ourselves or with our clients. And I read somewhere that it's so important to start collaborating with other women. And so that's what I did.
And I think a lot of us, not to interrupt you, but I've experienced this with a lot of women. They will hear that you need to collaborate, but it's important that you bring the spirit of collaboration to the table. Yeah. Collaboration does not mean I am doing etiquette. Because we both do etiquette in some form or another. I've done it before. But recognizing the fact that
I'm not coming and saying to Christine that I want to collaborate with you so I can take your ideas and run away with them. That's not collaboration.
No,
that's not a good spirit. You bring the spirit of collaboration. Hey, how can we work together to achieve a goal? I love what you are doing with Jan Fowkes. You know, the fact that the two of you are working together. She has strengths that you don't have, and vice versa. But when you bring them together, you have a great team.
Right.
And I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
This has been such a wonderful conversation. And we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I want you to tell people how they can get in touch with you.
Okay.
We'll be right back.
Up to 40% of businesses never recover after experiencing a major disaster. Make a plan at ready.gov/business.
When you throw away money on wasted electricity, you're throwing away everything you could have bought with it. Saving energy saves you money.
And we're coming up on the very end of a wonderful conversation with Christine Chen. And when we went to break, she had just shared with us 3 things that she thought women needed to pay attention to as it has to do with protocol in the professional arena as well as in your personal lives. So Christine, right now we're going to have you look at the camera, if you will, and tell people how they can get in touch with you.
So if I can, I'd like to add one more tip, especially for women.
Please do.
Okay, a lot of women, but I think more businesses are owned by women now than men. It's so important because I do teach customer service, and I think doing everything to the best of your ability, doing exceptional in everything that you do. That doesn't mean perfect, because sometimes we women beat ourselves up if it's not perfect. It doesn't mean perfect, but doing it to the best of your ability. If your client is paying you $100 or $10,000, you're giving the same service to both. Stellar service is powerful.
I think it's very, very important. So, but anyway, here's your opportunity to tell people how to get in touch with you.
All right. Well, I would love to hear from you. My website is www.g as in George, P as in Paul, protocol, protocol.com. You can email me at Chris, CHRIS, at gpprotocol.com, or give me a call, 301-580-7780.
You know, this is really the bad part of the conversation, is that it has to end. This has been so wonderful, and I would like to thank you again for taking the time to come and share your amazing story. And I know that there are many women out there who are going to benefit from the things that you've shared today. We are out of time. And I'd like to ask any of you who are watching this morning, if you are an amazing woman or know someone who is, please have them reach out to us. You can contact us at bonniemetromag.com. You can also email me, and we'd love to talk to you. So if you please give us a call or send an email. We are at the end of the show now, and we're going to talk to you on the flip side. Thank you so much for joining in. We'll talk to you soon.